opportunity as well.
We'll hear to Brent.
John, will you be using the search committee?
We will be using a search committee. Haven't finalized that, but yes,
Will you be using
it'll be small.
not only search committee, will you be using an outside consulting?
We're working with Bob Bodine, and Bob and I were on the phone yesterday numerous times.
Tommy?
Hey, Jack. Is connections to Syracuse and some background and familiarity with the 315, is that going to be an important characteristic of your search?
Tommy, I'm not sure it's got to be direct connection to the 315, but I think experience in the Northeast, I think is, either as a player, as a coach, as an assistant coach, I think is important. It's really hard. I think if you take somebody from the East Coast and put them out in the West Coast, right, you don't have those relationships, those recruiting relationships, those relationships with high school coaches. It's not lost on me that our four most successful coaches, in a sense, Coach Schwartzwalder grew up in Morgantown, right, Northeast. Coach Mack grew up in Maine, UMass. Coach Pasqualoni, Connecticut. Coach Marone, the Bronx. So there is a little bit of history there, and sometimes history can be a really good teacher.
Go over here to Dan.
John, kind of going off of that, do you look to Syracuse Orange football alumni when you do this search? Is that important to you to find someone who's been through the program, knows the program, has lived it, and can share that?
That would be an attribute, but I want to hire the best person, and the best person who I think can lead this program and lead this program successfully. So I don't want to narrow the pool, and I'm not, okay, they have to be an offensive specialist, they have to be a defensive specialist. You do that, you kind of narrow the pool of candidates. So it's the best coach who I think has the attributes to lead this program, to take this program forward to where we want to go. I would also add to that if there's candidates that have experience in special teams. Special teams is critically important in football. And when special teams is kind of situational football as well.
We'll go to Steve.
John, you talked about being thorough with the search, but also being efficient.
Right.
I know the transfer portal is, the next date is, December 4th?
Right.
Do you have a timeline in mind, and is it realistic to have things narrowed down by December 4th?
Steve, there's not a definitive date per se, but I'm aware of December 4th.
Tyler?
So looking big picture, coaching style, coaching values, what are you looking for with the next head coach of Syracuse football that will be, markedly different than Dino Babers?
Yeah, I'm not sure it has to be markedly different per se, but I'm interested in the philosophy that this person has, right? Their philosophy in terms of offense, their philosophy in terms of defense. I mentioned special teams, recruiting philosophy, player development, evaluators of talent, absolutely critical. I mean, one of the things that's important to any program in the recruiting process is to minimize the misses, right? If you do that, that's one way that you create more depth. So someone who's done that, who's demonstrated they can do that.
Right here in the second row.
Good morning. The success of the football team will have a lot of ripple effects off campus as well. If Dino's benchmark for this final season was 7-5, what will the goalposts look like for a new coach over X number of years to be able to be nationally competitive, to make CNY an attractive place for alumni to come back to, for people to fill bars in the city, etc.?
Well, I think, I've said repeatedly numerous times is when you start a season, the goal is to play that 13th game, right? And depending on how good you do in the first 12, depends where that 13th game is and who you play against it. And if you play those first 12 really, really well, maybe you get 13 and more than that. I expect us, and we can be a winning program. We're not that far away. Are there areas that we need to address? Yes. Will they be addressed? Absolutely. But it's not like this is a total reboot. We're a 2-10 team, and you got to totally reboot this. There's strengths. We've got to analyze our areas where we need to improve upon, and take the necessary steps. And that's one of the things the next head coach is going to have to do is, all right, what are the areas that we need to refine and we need to get better so that we can have the success that we all covet. In terms of this area, I think this is an attractive area. I mean, if you look at the momentum that this community has, right? Look at it from a micro perspective, and you can start with micro. But I think there's a lot of momentum in this community, and for a coach, this is a great place to raise a family. So there's a lot of attributes here, and I'm going to emphasize that.